Let's start with the big news. Letter to Pope Francis from the four cardinals. Jonathan Bennett asked, what do you think of the intervention letter from the four cardinals to Pope Francis and of Cardinal Burke's remarks that this could lead to a formal correction against the Pope? Is this a sign of impending schism within the Church?
That is a loaded question. Well, I think everything's wonderful. No. Well, let's say several things about several things. Okay. Firstly, because most of us don't know any church history, we don't realize that the church has always had, at different times, horrors and problems and difficulties of this kind. When Pope John the 22nd denied that the just will see God at the immediate judgment, that is to say, when you die, and imprisoned a friar who disagreed with him. That was a terrible thing, and the people who lived at that time were not what you would call ultra happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to be fair to everybody concerned, John the 22nd renounced his heresy on his deathbed, and that friar he tossed into prison ended up as a bishop. So, so one of the few times that good deeds are rewarded in this life. The other thing you've got to bear in mind, too, is that this is a drama that's certainly been playing out as long as I've been around. Because the same foggy, nothing means anything, nothing is specific, that the four cardinals are trying to cut through, is what has characterized Catholic life my entire adult life. It's just that what we're used to hearing from the pulpit, and what we're used to hearing from bishops when I was younger, and we don't hear that much anymore. We now hear from the highest authority. But if you think about it, generationally, that had to happen. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So they're insisting on clarity from a member of a generation that really have a hard time delivering clarity. They don't think in those terms, you see. They don't think about what things mean specifically, and they're very annoyed at being tacked down to anything specific. I mean, if you ask your parents, if you haven't had this experience yourself, how many times would one say to a priest after a very confusing sermon, "What exactly does that mean, Father? Where does that come from?" And the most you get is having the guy explode at you. But in terms of justifying it, this goes back to what Benedict XVI called the hermeneutic of rupture versus the hermeneutic of continuity. The hermeneutic of rupture tells us it's a whole new world, nothing means anything, we're all free of coherence, which is a beautiful thing to be free of, believe me. I hate coherence myself. It's haunted me my entire life. I've had to live up to it, and I hate it. So let me say I sympathize completely with where that generation of clerics is coming from. I understand. You know, Woodstock, yeah, I'm there. Unfortunately, we do live in the real world, which is something that has always seemed to evade the clergy of that generation. So the dubia that have been presented, the questions, are very specific, and they require very specific yes or no answers. The problem is a cleric of the Holy Father's generation is not comfortable giving yes or no answers, and doesn't very often even think in that way, in those categories. I mean, an answer to that he might give, and again, it will never be an official answer, I'm sure. We say, "Oh, you want a black or white answer?" Well, yeah. But see, the implication is that even wanting a specific answer shows how bad you are. The fact that you would think in that way shows how retrograde you are. Believe me, this is a road that many of us have been down all our lives. It just is kind of amusing to see it on the world stage and see it pulled on people who are much more qualified than you or me to make a proper response.
Okay.
And that's the problem. If the Holy Father wants to answer, for instance, one of the questions is, are there acts that are always intrinsically evil?
Pretty
Yes or no?
straightforward. Pretty straightforward.
It is. But see, Catholic moral teaching, as long as there's been Catholic moral teaching, is that, yeah, there are. There are things that you can never justify. Now, if the Holy Father says yes, then a lot of what's going out in his name, whether or not it's really from him, falls by the wayside. But if he says no, then he's contradicting 2,000 years of teaching and say, oh, by the way, you've got to believe me because I'm wonderful, or I know what I'm doing, or I'm Pope, and all the other popes are wrong. And that neither one of those are really answers he'll want to give. So I suspect, as again is very typical of that generation in action, rather than answering the question, one way or the other, opprobrium will be heaped upon the questioners. The problem is that these are very simple questions.
Yep.
You see, this is the crisis of that kind of tactic that, as I say, Catholics have been subjected to for the past 5 or 6 decades. We have had this, and again, I know I'm repeating myself, but I mean, growing up in Catholic schools, dealing with Catholic priests, it was the same bloody thing. It's just that now, instead of being some mere layman who could be thrown aside without answering, these are 4 cardinals of the church. And they're very learned men.
Yeah.
Perhaps even more learned than other people who should be better learned than they are.
Okay, so it seems like what you're getting at is, so there's not going to be a schism because he's not going to answer.
I doubt it. I doubt it highly. I mean, I've left the tarot cards at home. There's fog in my crystal ball. But I think that I doubt very highly there would be a schism. Because what would it be based on? Age? Because that's what it would be. It would be a generational thing. The gerontocracy saying, we're declaring war on the future. Well, okay, Holy Father, that's great. I'll see you in 10 years if you're still alive. And that kind of a schism, no, I don't think so.